The RCMP has laid new charges against engineering firm SNC-Lavalin, alleging criminal acts while doing business in Libya. The RCMP has charged 3 of SNC's subsidiaries with fraud and corruption. The charges alleged between August 2001 and September 2011, the 3 entities bribed a Libyan official or officials with more than $47 million Canadian. SNC's former CEO, Pierre Duhem, resigned in 2012 after it was discovered that $56 million in funds were missing. He was later arrested. Separately today, the heads of 3 major Canadian business groups called on Ottawa to ease new integrity rules, blocking Canadian firms from doing business with companies convicted of crimes anywhere in the world. The group said the uncertainty hurts the bidding process, undermines competition, drives up costs for the government, and costs jobs across Canada. Richard Leblanc is an Associate Prof of Law, Governance and Ethics at York University. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
So let's start with SNC. The company's reaction today was, this is all stuff we know. It's all stuff we've kind of copped to. It happened a long, long time ago. So what are you doing? They plan to fight the charges, obviously.
Yeah.
What's the relevance of the criminal charges that the RCMP are bringing now?
It's sort of like the Mike Duffy affair. It puts it in a very risky league because incarceration, reputation risk, significance of a fine. The burden for the state, for the RCMP, is much higher beyond a reasonable doubt, but once the potential for criminal conviction comes, it really focuses the mind. Chances are the board is meeting today to discuss an action plan, but this has been in the works. Justice is fairly good in Canada. The RCMP does eventually get its person, but it just takes time, so it's not surprising it took time.
Let's make the distinction here, because we've seen increasingly in the U.S. with some banks that criminal charges against entities seem to be this sort of new approach. Rather than individuals who will go to jail, it's against an organization or a subsidiary of an organization. Does that make it a different beast?
Yeah. Once, well, 2 things is you can charge the entity. You can also charge individuals.
Right.
Charging individuals really focuses the mind as well. And that's what's happening. So
SNC has had this cloud over it reputationally for some time.
Yes.
Obviously, this is yet another kind of black mark against it.
Yes.
How serious is it? Kind of in this global world where there is, when we look at the places they were doing business, bribery is sort of, in different forms, part of the way business got done for a long time.
Yes.
Is it a black mark against them back then, or is it a black mark under new standards that we're applying to them today? Both.
Back then, today, for example, Libya is the 165th most corrupt country in the world out of 174 countries. These BRICS economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they are high growth rates, but they're highly corrupt. So the integrity guidelines that were released today are essentially saying if you engage in corruption within these jurisdictions, we will punish you, this is the federal government, from procuring services and goods from us. So it's the federal government's way, and this is a broad agreement among governments internationally, of really raising the bar and having a strong anti-bribery, anti-corruption standards in place. So that's what governments are doing internationally. So
we've said this before in Canadian law, that we have a standard here and we expect you to use it everywhere. In other words, you can't go somewhere else and say this is how they roll. If it's a Canadian law and standard, it will apply. This takes it to the next level of saying it may even cost you serious business with the government. Do you think, we've heard from 3 different business groups today in response to these integrity frameworks saying you're going to do us damage because we may not always be able to know or monitor, or is that a fair argument? Or
no, I read the letter. I'm unpersuaded by the industry argument. I also read the integrity standards. I think there's nothing in there that other industrialized countries are not doing. The argument that industry is making is that it costs a lot. We've never done it this way. You're going to lose us business. Those arguments aren't persuasive. If you're doing business in a corrupt jurisdiction, you need to have your house in order. Yep. You need to have strong internal controls. You need to have robust practice. It's going to cost money. But the hope is that the industrialized countries will all agree to effect change in emerging economies so that they become less corrupt and everybody's on an equal playing field. That's where the governments are going.
One of the things that SNC seems to have revealed is that the culture around this stuff can become kind of baked in a little bit, so that, you know, even if we can't point the finger at a senior exec, it's stuff that happens over a long period of time, and you just assume it becomes sort of part of the fabric of a place. How do you undo that?
Well, see, this is where the board comes in. The board has to be able to instruct and direct management to walk away from business opportunities if the cost to procuring business is, and especially in certain industries. Construction is one of the most corrupt industries in the world. We even have allegations that SNC made a payment to Arthur Porter in relation to the Montreal University construction project. The board has to set this signal, tone at the top, incentives to management to be able to walk away from certain business. The board ultimately is in control here.
We should note that CBC is a arm of the government, government-controlled. SNC is a contractor to this entity. Does this mean that if these charges are upheld, that the government can no longer use SNC?
Yeah, the legislation does not apply to subcontractors. So if it's the government, not CBC. So you may still want to do business with SNC-Lavalin.
But it's exactly the kind of real business that they may lose because of these criminal charges.
Exactly, and they're banned from the World Bank for 10 years for bidding on business. So these governments and creditors now are placing the bar very high.
Richard, great to have you here.
My pleasure, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
Richard Leblanc is an associate prof of law, governance, and ethics at York University.